Hi everyone, welcome back to the Moonlit Circle. If you're new here, I'm Gwendie Belle Moone, author, storyteller, and celestial traveler. So let's do some healing. Before I get started too far, let me make sure my microphone is on because wouldn't that suck to record the whole thing and then realize the microphone wasn't on. So we're good to go. I hope you all had a beautiful Christmas and a holiday season with your family and loved ones. My kitty cat trio actually got a heating blanket from Santa, and they only leave it now at breakfast time and dinner time. So here they are, enjoying life, living their best lives. And I actually got where is it at? This right here, this little long distance bracelet with my granddaughter. Getting a similar one, and so they communicate with each other long distance, and now whenever we miss each other we can tap the bracelet and it will let the other one know that they're being thought of. So I really love that. I don't know how impressive that's going to be for a 4-year-old, but we'll see. She does like the jewelry, so hopefully it goes over well. And of course, this last weekend, I was able to see one of my old coworkers, which was very special Christmas surprise for me. I've been missing my team so much. We got together and made candles, and it was so much fun. Here I am in my handy dandy candle making apron. We actually had lunch and made candles and then walked around downtown and visited some shops and antique stores. Mr. Moon could never hang doing that kind of stuff for a whole afternoon. So this really did my heart some good. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. So we actually, while we were there, we got to create our own candle scents, like a personalized candle scent. And my personal creation, I ended up titling Forest Walk. And I made it by a special blend of ozonic and petrichor based notes. And I learned that the ozonic based notes are like smelling air or ozone, O3, like what the air smells like right before it's going to rain. And then petrichor is actually kind of a moist soil smell, like an earthy smell. And so I put those in alongside some cedarwood, dark fruit, and amber top note scents, and I made Forest Walk, a walk through the redwood forests. And so I'll be picking up my creation sometime this week, and I'll be sure to show you all next week when I get that. So tonight, we are actually going to be talking about what happens when silence, avoidance, and power collide, and how quickly a story can spiral when communication breaks down. Some some conflicts, well, most conflicts, honestly, don't start with big dramatic explosions. They start with things left unsaid or boundaries not clarified, discomfort minimized until it metastasizes into narrative warfare. So, tonight I'm going to walk you through a real world case study that's been playing out very publicly. We have been talking about this, not for gossip and not for spectacle, but we're going to take a look at this whole It Ends With Us drama, to extract lessons that could protect you in your own life, workplace, and relationships. And the big theme is communication. I can't say that enough. You've got to be communicating with your fellow humans. There's always going to be people who are going to cause chaos around them, regardless of the level of communication. There are some people who are just geared towards drama and chaos. But you don't have to be one of those people. And the best way to steer clear of that is knowing how to communicate with other people and knowing when someone who's trying to communicate with you is struggling. So we're going to talk about things like how direct communication could have stopped a crisis before it began. We're going to talk about the psychological patterns behind that are really like the driving force for people who like to twist events to gain power. And we're also going to talk about how you can protect yourself when you encounter those patterns. This is the dark side of the moon section, and not to scare you, but, to help you see clearly. So let's begin. By the light of the silvery moon, I want to, till my honey I'll love you. So before we get to the juicies, I do want to take you guys through a bit of my writing journey. One of the hardest parts of writing, and one of the most honest parts of writing, is knowing when a section of the story simply doesn't belong anymore. Not because it's written badly, but, because it doesn't really feel true anymore. It doesn't ring true anymore as your characters developed and as your story developed. And what you thought would be a cute little side plot turns out to be a disaster. So, there's really a very particular ache that comes when realizing you need to toss an entire section of your book and start over. It's not dramatic. It's really quiet and it's heavy. It's a little disorienting, especially when that section once felt like amazing progress. And for me, it felt exactly like opening a closet door I'd been avoiding. And I wanted to share this analogy with you guys because it was pretty heavy for me. It was, the kind of closet that's messy, but you keep closing the door on everything inside of it because dealing with it feels overwhelming. And we could use that as an analogy for several situations in life as well. But here we're literally talking about a closet that feels overwhelming to deal with. And, I could feel, well, I had written this section really months ago. And even then, when I was writing it, something about it didn't sit right. I really could feel the misalignment as I was writing it, but instead of forcing clarity, instead of taking a moment to stand back, I went with the flow. I told myself I'd come back to it later when I had more distance and more perspective and more truth to bring to this section of the book. And well, here we are, it's later. And I still didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like any concept of it, any fraction of it I didn't want to keep. So I did the thing that writers are often afraid to do, and I just erased it. All of it. I just cut it out. 3 full chapters. It wasn't a paragraph or a page, but it was a meaningful chunk of the story just gone. And, that wasn't a small decision. It was a commitment to integrity over attachment. I of course pulled that section out and put it in my, my little save for later box, but I wanted to make sure that these stories come out exactly the way I'm envisioning them in my head, to tell the story in the most meaningful way I know how to, and that is going to cost some creativity and maybe where I had an idea and went with it. Maybe it's just not conducive to the bigger picture. So I have to take that out. Like I said, commitment to integrity over attachment. And commitment to honesty over sunk costs. So I don't want to get trapped in that sunk cost fallacy and go, well, I spent time creating this, so obviously it needs to fit in here somehow. That is not how books come together in the most honest way. So what really surprised me wasn't the grief of deleting it. It was actually more of a relief. We're coming back to that, being able to empty out that overwhelming closet. I've been writing my whole life, but this is the first moment in time that I'm writing for the purpose of publishing. So it feels like the stakes are higher. The stakes are higher in some aspects, the moment those chapters were gone, as soon as I hit delete, sorry, my phone's ringing. But the moment those chapters were gone, I instinctively knew how the section needed to be rewritten. And it wasn't until I hit delete that that information came to me. It was in an instant, but I had to actually empty the closet. It was the same feeling I get once I finally empty out that neglected closet. And when everything is on the floor and the space is suddenly visible again, only then can you really see, what you're working with. What dimensions do you have? What gaps do you need to fill? Only then can you really imagine better arrangements and better flow and better use of what's actually there. So, writing kind of works for me in the same way. And sometimes the story doesn't need tweaking. It needs space. It needs to be cleared out and completely, so that you can see the truth of the room that you're able to re-enter and fill back in again. So, you have to empty that closet before you can see the potential. And I thought that was a really interesting analogy I wanted to share with you all. It's, that's the heart of writing, really, is letting lived experience move through you until it transforms into something more intentional, something shareable, something shaped that feels less like a cluttered closet and more like a magical moonlight beam. We had to throw in the moonlight beam. Now, we all know I'm a hot mess, certifiable, but I'm still all love and romanticism, and that's beneath an obsessive need for plotting out every hour of every day, but never fully committing to it. This is one of my little quirks. I use my calendars to set structure, and that tends to free my mind to play and be creative. So I will pour quite a bit of intense time and effort into organizing my day-to-day life. But I don't necessarily, claw my eyes out trying to stick to that schedule. It is a suggestion. So, in that same breath, I absolutely love nothing more than sitting down at the end of the year to plot out the upcoming dance around the sun. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so I wanted to introduce you to Gwendie's 2026 New Year's resolutions, and I will take you through my specific resolutions, because I know sometimes people have a hard time coming up with their own. And so I wanted to share mine with you, and feel free, pick and choose. If any of these resonate with you, if any of these call to you, by all means, have at it, and we can share the same goals for the year. So, number one, I choose consistency over intensity. And I created these in kind of an affirmation style so that I could very easily just say them out loud to myself in the morning time when I'm getting ready. And with this first one, I choose consistency over intensity. I'm thinking, I want to stop trying to change my life in bursts and instead show up in small, repeatable ways. A little stability, and consistency, and especially when it feels ordinary, bring a little magic to that, because progress is built quietly. It's not always a big show. Number two, I finish what I begin. This is a big one for me. I'm quite the procrastinator. I'm quite the project starter and abandoner. So I really want a year where I complete what I've started. And of course, this year, that is my book. I'm really inspired and ready and certain that it's time to publish something that I've written, and I'm determined to do that in quarter one of 2026. And completion is an act of self-trust, not perfection. And so, being a perfectionist, as many people pleasers are, it's very difficult for me to go, okay, I've done everything that I can here. This is exactly the way I want it, because perfectionists never have things the way they want it. There's always some tweaking. There's always something more that could be done to move towards perfection. But it's just an avoidance tool. And so that's why I really wanted to put pretty high up on my list, that I'm going to finish what I begin, because no excuses. I have goals, and I want to meet those goals, and so I need to be more trusting in what I create, rather than trying to push things forever and ever and ever towards some never ending goal of perfection. So, number three is I move my body as an act of respect, not punishment. Most of my life was spent resenting physical activity because it hurt. It was a lot of work for a larger body, and that's no way to look at it. Movement is a privilege, and let me tell you, as someone who spent a couple of years with the inability to move, it is definitely one of the biggest privileges that you have as a human being. And it's very sad that, as a group, we tend to not pay attention to that ability until it's gone. We tend to not revere the fact that we are independent, bipedal animals, and we can get around, and we have thumbs, and we can move and make ourselves something to eat whenever we want to, and we can get in a car and drive it whenever we want to. The people who view that as a privilege, as something to be fostered and cared for and maintained, are the people who have lost that ability. If you have the ability to move around freely and without a lot of pain on a day-to-day basis, you tend to forget how amazing that is. And so I wanted, pretty high up on my list as well, for body movement and mobility and flexibility to be, very, very high on my list of important things on a daily reminder. Daily movement is how I stay connected to myself. And in fact, with some autoimmune and connective tissue disorders, daily movement is necessary for me. I have to stretch every single day, or I do risk the going back to the days of pain and being stuck on the couch. But movement isn't, for me, it's not a means to an end, but a relationship that I maintain with my body. It's a pretty new relationship, because I spent decades ignoring, the signs and the symptoms, and ignoring the needed maintenance and care. And so I'm putting that back up high on the list at number 3 now. Number 4 is I tend my nervous system before I tend my to-do list. Look, not working now for this, November was a bit of a mess with the head injury and the cyclic vomiting. But since I've had a chance to kind of re-regulate my nervous system and Not having to work has certainly sped up that process. But even if you are working, there are things that you can do to make sure that you're prioritizing your nervous system regulation, meditation, making sure that you're getting set hours of rest every night, and rituals. You know, these are things that you should bring into your day to day for your nervous system regulation. These are not things that should be held back as rewards if you get all your to-do lists done. So I want to make it clear to everyone that when I say I tend my nervous system before I tend my to-do list, I I'm not saying I'm going to meditate before I do the dishes. I'm saying that I'm not going to withhold those items in my life that assist with nervous system regulation, such as meditation, rest, and rituals. I'm not going to withhold those as a prize for myself after I've done my checklist of, dishes and laundry and things of that nature, or whatever errands you have to run. These are requirements for a regulated, honest life, and they should not be used as pawns or negotiations with your own sense of procrastination or getting things done. So that's what I'm trying to say there. I hope I made that clear. The next one is I tell the truth earlier. I'm not going to hold on, because if you have an opinion, you have a strong opinion, and you keep it to yourself, that's lying by omission. If you're put into a situation several times where you need to communicate your needs, boundaries, and discomfort before resentment starts to sink in and take root, silence is no longer the default that you should aim for. Say what you mean, say how you feel. Put it out in the universe. Communicate your needs and boundaries. And that's what I'm going to do as well. And then, I protect my creative energy like something sacred. And that's kind of what I've been doing with figuring out the schedule for the Moonlit Circle and the journal posts, and making sure that my new days off for rest and respite are aligned with Mr. Moon's. So, I protect my creative energy in that way. My writing, art, and imagination really deserve space that isn't constantly interrupted or explained or justified. So I carve out, sections of the day to really dedicate to the creative energies. And I have quite a bit of time to do that now, but I'm also very ADHD. So having zones of the day really helps me to get a lot more done and to not just constantly be flitting from one thing to the next. So I create my creative energy. I protect my creative energy by setting aside actual time in my day to really focus on it and allow it to grow. The next thing is I choose depth over distraction. And again, these are plotted out in such a way that they're like affirmations that you can say in the mirror every morning to get your day started and stay on track. In fact, I absolutely recommend doing that. So say it with me. Stand in the mirror and look at yourself in the eye and say, I choose depth over distraction. Because listen, everything you read or listen to or learn or grow deliberately, a book, a seminar, a meaningful conversation, make sure that you aren't getting lost in the weeds. Make sure that you are getting some emotional connection from everything that you touch or do. And number 8, I build a life that can hold me. So basically I want to take advantage of being at home and having more flexibility with my time throughout the day, to be able to build that nest and build that life that, previously maybe I didn't have time to because all of my additional energy was going into work. But through home care and skill building and future planning, I'm creating stability that supports who I'm becoming, not just as a housewife, but as an author, um, not who I used to be. So I am currently focused on writing and authorship and self-publishing and self-promotion, and but I'm also focused on my home and making sure that, the day-to-day things that before were kind of like, oh, I'll pick those up if I have the energy. I'm really trying to move forward with, this is a necessity to make my space the most comfortable. And so I really want to, dive into that for 2026. Number 9, I invest in relationships that feel reciprocal and real. And I I think 2025 was a rather isolating year for me. Just pulling back, and not having time, between helping to take care of my mom, and helping her with her road through, cancer and chemo and recovery, and then work. For the last 2 years, my position has been kind of up in the air, and my career at that company has been, on the chopping block because the company itself was so unstable. And so for 2 years, that was, it kept me in a heightened, hyper vigilant state of any day now you could lose your job. And So I want to, because I really ended up misaligning myself with some relationships, and not being as available as I would have liked to. I want to show up with presence in 2026, not performance, not, slapping on a smile and doing things as quickly as possible to get out of there because boy am I tired. I don't want to be that way anymore. I want to have some, invested relationships, and I want to spend more quality time with the people that I've been kind of rushing on, so that I could get back to business. This is, in my marriage, my friendships, my family, and my community. Of course, I do have the privilege of time right now, and so, I understand that that is, something that I need to work with because not everybody is going to have that time. Most people are still, juggling life and a full time career, whereas I get to step back a little from that, at this point. And so I need to, also, in the same breath, uh, be able to respect, my loved one's time. And number 10, I let joy count as productivity. By golly, it is. I am not going to parcel out, joy or entertainment, time spent laughing, playing games, sharing meals, painting, or simply being, is not wasted. Mr. Moon and I sat on the couch one day this last weekend and did absolutely nothing but veg out and watch TV, and it was glorious. It was glorious. And that's the evidence of a life well lived. And I have to stop berating myself for those moments because, I will look back on those moments sometimes and go, oh well, you could have been, doing this or that or the other. You could have gotten this done. It would have been nothing to have, folded laundry while you were sitting there watching TV. I do that to myself, and And it's not healthy. So I want to stop doing that, and allow those joyful moments to count as productivity moving forward. If I view them as, yeah, that was time well invested, because that's going to make me happier, that's going to keep me more regulated, that's going to increase the bonding that I have with Mr. Moon, all of the good things. So why not enjoy the moment and not feel guilty about it after? And then number 11, I want to honor my younger self, the younger versions of me, without letting them steer the wheel. So, I'm going down this really vulnerable path in looking at my own childhood and writing this roman à clef, because it's bringing back some real powerful emotions that I haven't sat with in a very long time. Um, I I'm pulling my younger self into my field of vision, and I'm taking a good hard look at her, and I'm trying to listen and soothe and integrate the stories, and then I bring myself back to my adult wisdom, because you can get sucked into emotions so easily when you allow yourself to relive trauma, which I'm doing by writing it down. Then it can your body is going to react as if it was happening in that moment as you're reliving it in your brain. And so you have to be kind to yourself. And that's why, I added this to my 2026, my 2026 resolutions, because I want to honor my younger self, but I also know that my younger self was drowning, and that my younger self was not in a good headspace, and that is not the right mentality to steer the wheel. So I listen to her, and I try to have moments with her, and I try to understand how she was feeling in the moment, and really kind of giving her her own identity, so that I can not have to relive that fully. That there's a separation between who she was and who I am. And so I just wanted to call that out for my resolutions and for my daily affirmations, so that I don't get lost in those emotions. And it's just an anchoring statement to pull me back to my current reality when looking back and reflecting becomes too sad or too overwhelming. And then number 12, I live in rhythm with the moon, not the clock. And let me tell you, this is a big one for me, because this is the first year that I have decided to go with a calendar that doesn't bust out all of the hours of the day. Because I'm that meticulous with my scheduling, and I will calendar every 15-minute section of the day, every 30-minute section of the day. What is this block for? What is this particular 15-minute section for? What is this particular 15-minute section for? Do you have to drive? Okay, well, let's cross out those lines, because you can't do anything else while you're driving except listening to an audiobook. But those are the kinds of information that actually get logged in my calendars. And I don't really want to expose myself too much on the internet, but I guess I could try to show you what a day looks like. This one's a little, it's taped together, but so you can see that I actually am scheduling myself all day long. And then I don't stick with it. And then that infuriates me because I didn't get as much done as I wanted to do, as I had planned to do. And so my final resolution for 2026 is actually very important to me because I have moved this year to a style of calendar that doesn't have the hours of the day plotted out. And I don't know yet how I feel about that. I have like visceral reaction to thinking about it. But I really want to try being more realistic in my calendaring and my scheduling. Because it affects me negatively when I'm not able to keep up with what I've calendared for myself. So my thought process was that just having a handful of lines to write down the most important things that need to be taken care of that day should suffice. And then I just need to figure out at what point of the day do I want to do those things. So this is a learning experience for me. This may not work out. I may have to go back to the more structured every 15 minutes or every 30-minute line per hour per day. So we'll see. So yes, this is and the reason why I put it in these specific set of words, because this is a little more romanticized than oh, you just need a less detailed calendar, is because again, in the morning times, I want to stand in the mirror and call out my affirmations, my resolutions for the year that are formulated as affirmations to keep me on track, to remind me. And it just seemed a little more romantic, a little more, fairy tale by saying I live in rhythm with the moon, not the clock, while I'm trying to break free from the clock. So, weekly rituals, seasonal reflections, cyclical planning, they guide my year more than the arbitrary deadline of do this by 10:15 a.m. And so I really am trying to relax myself into that this year. And I think this will be my hanging point. This may be a resolution for the next couple of years as I work to perfect this, because I've never tried this before, so we'll see how it goes. But I believe it's also very important to set an annual mantra or affirmation for yourself that's just like one or two lines that, if you don't have time to go over each one of your resolutions as an affirmation, at least you can do this quick reminder in the mirror and kind of set the tone for the day if you need to. So, affirmations really work by shaping your attention. They sharpen the focus of where your brain is going. Ding ding, oh, there's something over there. And they reinforce your identity, and they actually help regulate your emotions, not by creating false beliefs, but by training the brain to notice and act in alignment with chosen values. You're really just giving yourself a reminder of, hey, this is important to me. And that keeps your brain on track. And without you having to do much else other than say your affirmations out loud. And an annual, a yearly mantra can function as kind of a cognitive anchor. Again, if you don't have time to say all of your resolutions out loud. Of course, I have a bit of a longer list than I think the average Joe. So, if you've got 2 or 3 affirmations, perfect. 2 or 3 resolutions, perfect. That's a mantra. But the annual mantra, it can function as a cognitive anchor for the year, or, from day to day, and it can reduce decision fatigue. You already know what you want. Just remind yourself of what the guiding principle is, and providing a steady point of return when motivation dips or circumstances change, maybe not in your favor, because it really emphasizes orientation rather than perfection. A mantra supports course correction instead of like an all or nothing type of thinking pattern. So over time, this consistency can help translate long-term goals into repeatable actions and lasting habits. So my 2026 mantra is I am not rushing my becoming. I invite peaceful guidance into my transformation. So you'll notice by going through all of my resolutions that this statement right here could really encompass all of my resolutions. And so if I don't have time to go through each of my resolutions in the morning time, I can just say my 2026 mantra, and that's going to put me right on course. That's going to remind me, hey, you're trying to slow down. You're trying to take in your surroundings. You're trying to become something new. You're transitioning. You're trying to bring in all of the wisdom that you can into that transformation to have it be a peaceful, calm experience. And all of that is jam-packed in those two tiny little sentences, and much more. And so, it's really good to have yourself just a one sentence or two sentence mantra that you can say to yourself just as a quick reminder. So let's do a little housekeeping and take a look at what we have in store for the Moonlit Circle in 2026. So of course we'll have our Monday Moonlit Circle connection videos here on YouTube every Monday evening. And then we'll continue diving into my weight loss and health journey through quarter 1 during our Wednesday evening YouTube post for Becoming Gwendie mini-series. And that's called the Metamorphosis that we're doing right now on the weight loss and health journey. But in quarter 2, we'll actually start exploring a new mini series titled By the Light of the Moon, where I explore my decision to drop my nursing career in lieu of becoming a full-time writer. So I'm going to look forward to that in quarter 2. It'll start in April. And over on Facebook, we'll have journal prompts each day, Monday through Thursday. But I'm sure you guys have noticed that on Mondays and Wednesdays, these journal prompts have changed a little bit because I did get some feedback that it seemed like they were unconnected to the videos that I was putting out for that day. And it's true, they were completely unconnected. And that gave rise for, would it be best if it was something that was a companion to the themes of the video? And so I went with that, and it seems like it's working and everybody likes it. So now on Mondays and Wednesdays, the journal prompts, they're companions to the themes addressed in the YouTube video released that day, rather than being structured like the Tuesday and Thursday journal prompts. Now, the Tuesday and Thursday journal prompts, they are a bit more free-flowing, but they are still structured in a way. So they're structured by what's happening in the celestial skies on that day or on that evening, and what that might be lending to a particular energy or frequency. And I take that information and kind of mesh it together. Basically, I look at the current phase of the moon and the meanings assigned to each phase, along with constellation that the moon is moving through, which can tweak the energies and frequencies a bit based on the characteristics of the constellation. And then I'll also take into consideration any large, widely acknowledged celebration like, Christmas or Hanukkah or a memorial of some kind, along with a planetary-wide general astrological reading. Like where are the star alignments right now, and what kind of energy does that bring to Earth as a planet, not to the individual sun signs. As both of these things can really impact what kind of day you experience based on your unique footprint as a human. So as you can see, these journal prompts that I post on Tuesdays and Thursdays are highly specifically curated to be contemplated on the evening that they're posted, because they are literally designed for that day, for that day's energies and frequencies. But that being said, the generalized themes help to ensure that you can really gain benefit from these journal prompts, even if they are reviewed and considered and responded to after their intended date. So I don't want you to think that you've missed some kind of window of opportunity if you didn't get to the Thursday post, the Thursday night journal post over on Facebook with the Moonlit Circle until Friday. While the post and its energies and frequencies are really aligned for Thursday, I keep it general enough to where you can honestly find some kind of benefit no matter when you look at these posts. So just wanted to share that with you guys so that these are curated for you specifically for that day, but it doesn't mean that you can't use them later if you need to. So as we move into 2026, please know this for the Moonlit Circle. The Moonlit Circle it's not about keeping up. It's not about doing things exactly when they roll out. It's about coming home. I want this place to be an offering that you can come here as you are, not to demand your presence or perfection. You can watch, read, reflect, return later. The rhythm is steady, but your participation needs to be gentle. Whether you join us every single week or only when something calls to you, this space is designed to support reflection, growth, and becoming in ways that feel grounded, human, and sustainable. Let the moon be your guide, not a deadline, and take what resonates and leave what doesn't, and trust that you'll arrive exactly when you were meant to. I'm so grateful to be walking into this new year with you guys, and here's to 2026 and to becoming together, by the light of the moon. So I usually do a section called All Things Love, but I feel like this week we need to take a break from All Things Love so I can give you something a little more juicier. Let's move on to the Culture Corner and take down some lessons learned from the 2025 activities of the It Ends With Us lawsuits. Let's dive in, shall we? Okay, buckle up, everyone. I know I use Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni and the It Ends With Us lawsuit as a point of discussion from time to time, but it's come to my attention that not everyone is up to speed on this wild roller coaster of a situation. So I thought what we could do today is a 2025 recap of the shit show and get everyone sipping from the same cup of tea so everyone's aware of what I'm referencing when I talk about Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and It Ends With Us. So I'll do kind of an overall summary of the situation, and then I'll take you through what are Blake Lively's allegations versus what are Justin Baldoni's allegations and where we are now and moving into 2026. So in late December 2024, Blake Lively filed a California Civil Rights Department complaint, CRD complaint. And then a federal lawsuit, right after that, she filed a federal lawsuit alleging sexual harassment, retaliation, and related claims against Justin Baldoni and others involved in It Ends With Us and the New York Times, reporting her allegations and an alleged smear campaign using texts that were obtained from a shady legal loophole that may or may not be actually illegal. We'll see. That part has yet to be determined. Now, in early 2025, Justin Baldoni who was not only the director of It Ends With Us, but also he was with the producing company and the production company, and he was also the main character, the main male protagonist. Baldoni, after Blake Lively had filed her complaint and lawsuit, Baldoni filed a counter lawsuit against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and others for $400 million, accusing them of defamation and extortion. That's been his thing this whole time, is that, basically Blake Lively was just trying to take over the movie. And she was extorting him to do so. And the cases were consolidated in New York by His Honor Judge Louis J. Lyman, which some people love, some people hate. He does seem to be very Blake Lively forward, but it's my understanding that in these kinds of cases, the judges will tend to lean towards, whoever filed the complaint initially, just to make sure that, if they don't win the case, they can't come back and say that they weren't allowed to produce as much evidence as they wanted to, or something, some such nonsense like that. But several of Baldoni's countersuits were later dismissed for failing to meet legal standards, while both sides continued discovery disputes and media positioning throughout 2025. So this has been a PR whirlwind. Like every day, something coming out about this case, literally every day. It is the case that keeps on giving. And as of late 2025, pretrial proceedings remain ongoing, with a potential trial anticipated in May of 2026. And that is the pushed back date, because it was previously going to happen a little bit sooner in 2026, and then it got bumped for to do some criminal trials ahead. So let's break down what each side is accusing the other of. We'll start with Blake Lively's allegations. So Lively's central claims from her CRD complaint in California and from the federal suit that she filed in New York include sexual harassment or SH, I should say it's SH, and inappropriate behavior by Baldoni and producer Jamie Heath on set. And we later find out that Justin Baldoni's terrible action here was that he called a pair of pants and a onesie sexy because his co-stars had been using that term as well. Apparently what Jamie Heath did was he was told he could come into Blake Lively's trailer while she was breastfeeding, and she said, "You can't make eye contact with me." And then while he was talking with her, he made eye contact with her. Whatever. So another one of her claims was retaliation for raising concern about workplace conduct. And we later find out that what she considered to be retaliation was organic online hate for Blake Lively, and Justin Baldoni's actions to preemptively defend his reputation against what he deemed to be false claims and accusations. That's retaliation, according to Blake Lively. You can't defend yourself against what you feel are false claims if Blake Lively is your accuser. That's the law. And she also claimed a coordinated public and online smear campaign involving crisis PR professionals to damage her reputation when she complained about misconduct. And here's my take on that. I, as a human being, 100% dislike and actively boycott Blake Lively and anyone even remotely associated with her at this point, because I do not like her. I made that decision myself as a human being. And I am a human being, not a PR bot, as Blake Lively claims. Her online demise was completely organic, and she has no proof otherwise in a lot of people's opinion. Another one of her complaints was failures to prevent or remedy harassment and hostile environment issues and related tort claims like emotional distress and invasion of privacy. We later find out that no formal complaints were made or filed at the time, and take a looky-loo. We also later find out, allegedly, that she couldn't prove emotional distress when asked to, so her lawyers encouraged her to downgrade her suffering to garden variety distress because she wouldn't have to prove anything formally if it's garden variety. Again, it's because she has no proof. Not a single witness to share how distressed she was. Not a single therapy session required. Not a single discussion with a medical professional. In my personal opinion, she's either hiding a serious personality disorder that would be exposed if she claimed true distress, or she's lying about being distressed at all. Either of these scenarios make perfect sense here, and neither of those scenarios make Blake Lively look good. She has also alleged that other cast or crew felt uncomfortable. She filed on their behalf. Though some specific dramatic early allegations seen in social chatter have not been central in the formal filings, and some descriptions of them have faded in later legal documents. So basically, she came out of the gate screaming about everything that Justin Baldoni had done. What a terrible perpetrator. We later find out that her husband, Ryan Reynolds, allegedly has been running around calling Justin Baldoni a sexual predator to producers, but he doubled down and said the same thing in a motion to the courts. Ryan thinks this is not defamation because he truly believes Justin is a sexual predator. Do we know if Ryan truly believes this because Blake Lively shared where she texted her husband that she was uncomfortable on set? No, it couldn't be that simple. Do we know if Ryan is privy to some past conviction or accusation against Justin Baldoni? No, none of that. That would be too easy. No, Ryan truly believes that Justin Baldoni is a sexual predator because once, some years ago or whenever, he said something on a podcast. It was a podcast about men sharing and opening up about their faults and how they can become better men. And on this podcast, Baldoni had the absolute gall one time to say that he feels bad that back in the day he didn't ask women for consent. Ryan goes, "Ha! Caught red-handed." Like what? Like what? Never mind the fact that no one asked for consent back in the day. No one. Literally no one asked for consent back in the day. But also, there was a lot of hugging on set. And this was another characteristic, according to Ryan Reynolds, of a sexual predator. But never mind the fact that it was the crew who was supposedly complaining to Blake that they are on camera initiating most of those hugs. So, what? But before we get to Justin Baldoni's defense and what his claims are, I have a quick message for the Blake Lively legal team, who are currently making bank off the back of Ryan Reynolds. But in my honest opinion, at the same time, losing their humanity and reputation in the process. Good luck, guys. Now, let's take a look at Justin Baldoni's defense allegations. In response to all of that shenanigans from the Reynolds, Baldoni and associated defendants have alleged that Lively's harassment claims and public narrative are false or exaggerated. And we have quite a bit of proof of that that's already been released. When she said, "Oh, the sky's on fire," actually it was really just a sunset. that another complaint was that Lively attempted to gain creative control of the production and then used retaliatory claims to deflect criticism and blame. Yeah. In his $400 million countersuit that was later dismissed because defamation countersuits are impossible, they claimed civil extortion, defamation, and invasion of privacy by Lively and her representatives. You know what that invasion of privacy thing was? Was them real backhandedly getting a hold of PR person's personal cell phone, and then illegally accessing it. Oh my God, unbelievable. They deny any orchestrated smear campaign. This is Justin Baldoni's team. They deny any orchestrated smear campaign against Lively, framing any media engagements or public messages as standard industry communications and disputing the harassment narrative. And Baldoni's team also contested evidence Lively's side cited and sought to introduce communications and timelines showing mutual conflict over the production environment. So basically, what she did was, Ryan Reynolds really, he wrote this big long list of things that you can no longer do on the set, or Blake Lively's not going to come back to the set. Well, this list listed out a whole bunch of like hypotheticals that never happened. You know, I mean, would you sign a list if you had a verbal confrontation with someone and you just disagreed with them and they brought you a list afterwards and said, in order for me to continue working with you, you have to sign this list saying you're sorry and that you're going to make sure that none of this stuff happens again, using the word again. And in the list, you see that you're being accused of sexual harassment. You're being accused of making people uncomfortable. You're being accused of bad touch. What? You're not going to sign that. You're not going to sign that, especially if you know it's not true. Why would you sign that? Oh my God. Unbelievable. So anyways, in summary, I get too excited about this case. In summary, Lively accuses Baldoni, the Wayfarer producers, and their PR agents of sexual harassment, retaliation, and a concerted campaign to undermine her professionally and personally. She claims that the online hate on her isn't by real people. It's a digital concerted effort to take her down. Well, coming from the hate group myself, I can again expressly confirm that I dislike Blake Lively as a human being, and I will actively boycott her and anyone even remotely associated with her until my dying day, and I am not a bot. Baldoni says Lively's claims are false and that she sought control of the film and then used legal claims to damage his reputation. His defamation extortion countersuit has been largely dismissed, again because it is so impossible to win a defamation suit, especially against somebody who's out there in the public. But a countersuit was never really meant to be won. It was always going to be dismissed because it's so hard to prove defamation of a person who's famous, nearly impossible. But the filed countersuit did ensure that Baldoni's side would get out there to the public. And that was likely the whole purpose of the countersuit, was just to get his side out there, where Blake Lively was already trying to set the tone on what a supposed degenerate, Baldoni was. Except now the truth is coming out, much to Blake Lively's dismay. The court is ongoing with pretrial activity and discovery disputes, and some claims are set for trial in 2026. I have my popcorn ready, guys. Now let's take a look on the dark side of the moon, and let's see what we can learn from Blake Lively's, see you next Tuesday antics. take a little trip with me. Let's pretend the whole "it ends with us" lawsuit wasn't a dirty power grab, in my opinion. And for fun, let's play pretend that Blake Lively is actually being genuine in her complaints of SH and retaliation. Fat chance, in my opinion. Just like Blake being cast as Lily Bloom. But I digress. Let's say you, female, as most of my audience is, let's say you find yourself in an uncomfortable work setting and a male supervisor continues, after you've asked him not to, continues to initiate long, tightly held hugs. And again, this is even after you've asked him to stop. So let's first take a look at how communication could have prevented this, explosion. Many large interpersonal or public conflicts don't begin with malice. They begin with avoidance. And, we're taking a look at this with two lenses. You've got the "it ends with us" legal case, and then we're looking at our personal scenario, and we're bringing this into the real world. What would happen if you, as a woman, an employee, continuously came up against this supervisor who's male, who holds power over you and continues to put you into compromising situations that make you uncomfortable after you have asked him to stop? So that's a big one, and it's more common than people would think. But first, before we take this guy to court, before we steamroll past HR and slap a lawsuit on the table, let's look at common early communication breakdowns. There are a few things that can really impede communication pretty early on. And this is where most of us get hung up. And I'm going to go over all of those. And it's, the common early communication breakdowns are unspoken expectations, power imbalances that discourage honesty, fear and discomfort or accountability, and indirect communication. So I'm going to break all four of those down for you so we can talk through them in one of the two scenarios that we have going on. We've got the "it ends with us" scenario. We've got, you and your supervisor. So let's break down unspoken expectations. I'll go over this topic in much more detail some other day. But ladies, I don't know who needs to hear this, but seriously, no one can read your mind. If you have an unmet need, dropping hints associated to high stakes needs is not the way to do it. Express yourself accurately if you want to be taken seriously by anyone. If you go through life expecting that people should know what you meant, you should have known what I meant by a look or a sigh or, the silent treatment. You will always get tossed to the side with your needs unmet. You will never have your needs met if you can't verbalize them. So stop it. Use your words. Anyway, back to the list of ways you can find yourself in situations with early communication breakdowns at a place of work. Here's a big one: power imbalances that discourage honesty. And this is a situation that we have with the scenario that we set up with your huggy supervisor. This is a big one in the workplace, and oftentimes why people don't speak up is that power imbalance. And, they don't speak up about really improper situations. But you have rights as an employee, regardless of what state you're working in. And even if you don't feel comfortable complaining about a situation to anyone at your place of employment, your state's labor department will have steps you can take outside your place of employment. So, although I really do encourage you to use measures internally first, if you feel safe doing so, I do want I want everyone to know that if you don't feel safe doing that, you can check with your state's labor department on what possible actions you can take. But asking someone to read your mind that you're feeling uncomfortable is not the way to do it. And keeping your mouth shut because you're afraid of power imbalances is also not the way to do it. You have to speak your words. You have to say your piece, and you have to talk to someone, whether that be your manager, somebody over the supervisor, your HR department, or if you don't feel comfortable inside your own company, going to the state, because there are plenty of opportunities for you to get this out there and to make sure that you are in a safe situation. So the next item is fear of discomfort or accountability. So why would you need to be afraid of discomfort or accountability by saying that somebody else did something to you that made you uncomfortable? Well, because this is the real world, and we all get in our heads, and situations are never as clean and clear cut as one would like them to be. So let's take a look at this tight hugger. For instance, your direct supervisor in our scenario, maybe you're worried about retaliation since you did initiate the very first hug that you had with him. Well, listen, hugging isn't illegal, but continuing to hug in a way that makes the other party uncomfortable and having been asked already to stop this activity and continuing makes it a reprimandable act that shouldn't be tolerated. So it doesn't matter how messy the situation is. If you are uncomfortable, it should not be tolerated. It should not be tolerated. If you find that you feel some sense of responsibility in the matter, or you feel like somehow it's going to come back on you, I encourage you to still come forward and explain your side, because without it, it's just going to be swept under the rug. You have to come forward, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and there may be parts that you have to take accountability for, but ultimately your safety should matter first. And then of course there's indirect communication. In our scenario, you've made your expectations clear already, but because the action is being conducted by a supervisor who directly impacts your ability to achieve raises and promotions, you may feel like you can't speak up. But you start to harbor resentment for your supervisor, so you start saying negative statements about him to your coworkers. Only they have not experienced the invasive hugging or seen it, so they start feeling like you dislike the supervisor for no reason. So even though you've dropped hints and expected your side to just magically be known, now you just have a workplace full of people who don't know that you're struggling, they don't know what you're struggling with, and they believe you are now a negative impact on the team. So it does not ever serve you to drop hints instead of making your needs and wishes loud and clear. This is a Gwendie life lesson. I'll start a list for y'all once I get our website going. But what do you do with that? Now you know how the early communication breaks down, what effective communication would have been required for this scenario? How about early boundary clarification? This isn't okay for me. You did that one in the scenario, so check. We got that one marked off. We have already done that early boundary clarification. And when we say early boundary clarification, we are using our words. We are saying out loud, this particular action makes me feel uncomfortable. I do not want you to do it again. If you're not being that clear, then you're not setting boundaries. Direct documented conversations. This is a big one, especially in the workplace. And when I say direct documented conversations, we're not talking about emotional venting. We're not talking about you going, "Oh, can you believe that creep?" And sending an email. No, 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 no. You want to clearly define what's happening and get it in writing to protect yourself. If you feel safe doing so, of course, you could send an email to the supervisor directly to ask him to stop the behavior and explain that you've already asked him once to do it. However, if you don't feel safe doing that, you could CC your HR or send just directly to your HR department if you're concerned about the outcome of exposing the supervisor's actions to him directly. So send yourself an email if you don't have any other way of accomplishing this comfortably. I do encourage you to involve a higher up or your HR department, but I do understand that some people legitimately do not feel comfortable doing so. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're sending yourself an email if you don't feel comfortable sending to anyone else, because at least that is a proof of something happening at a point in time. Now, if you're sending yourself an email going 2 years ago, this happened, and it's dated for today, that's not really helpful. You want to have a chronological list of what happened with date and time stamps, and that's what those emails can do for you. And it's going to help you keep your story straight, because the facts can get muddled after so long of being in an intense situation. And anytime you're hyper vigilant, you're gonna remember less details of a situation. So it's easy to lose those details when emotions are high. So this is a really great way to keep track of what happened chronologically. And then you want to repair attempts. You want to attempt to repair instead of automatically going toward defensiveness. We'll talk a little more about this here in a little bit, but I always try to talk through the situation. Again, if you feel safe doing so. This is the most professional way to go about this, is to have a direct conversation with the supervisor. But do involve HR if you feel even the slightest bit weird about discussing this with the supervisor directly. You already tried that in this scenario. Keep that in mind. And so it is not unheard of to, at this point, go ahead and grab a third-party mediation. Before we get to legal escalation, we're still trying to mediate this situation. We're still trying to take it down a notch before it has to get escalated like they did with the It Ends With Us lawsuit. So third-party mediation before escalation, and this would be, again, your HR department. That is your best course of action for your first stop. Now, does it have to be your only stop? Absolutely not. Girl, you are out here to protect yourself. So you can also go to the state's labor department prior to involving legal counsel. So those are just some ways that we could effectively de-escalate the scenario so that it doesn't have to go to a legal filing. Most crises aren't caused by a single conversation or a single moment in time. They're caused by hundreds of little avoided ones. And so, continuing to avoid the situation isn't working. You actively said, "Please don't hug me. I don't appreciate it." And he continues, and you have tried your effective communication scenarios, and and now you're moving forward. But if you had continued to just accept the hugs or kind of like give a look and like wiggle away, you're not communicating your need to have the hugs stop. So you're continuing to avoid the scenario anytime you allow yourself to be hugged. So you've got to stand up, and it is an uncomfortable situation, but you have to make your needs known. When people don't address conflict early, the nervous system fills in the gaps, and that's really where stories start replacing facts, and we start getting really out of control in situations like this. In general, certain psychological patterns can be deduced when you encounter people who seem to thrive on twisting the details of any event to become, a benefit to them, laying waste to anyone who dares to get in their way. But before we dive in, it's important to be very clear here. This is for educational purposes only. Only licensed professionals can diagnose. But let's review common patterns seen in people whose superpower is manipulating people and narratives with obvious malice. We've probably all bumped into somebody like this. The patterns tend to include pathological externalization, cognitive distortion in combination with self-preservation, instrumental empathy or weaponized empathy, as I like to call it, victim persecutor switching, and we'll touch on each of these patterns and how to identify them. So again, this is how you're gonna find those manipulators out in the world. These are some really good techniques on how to identify these folks, so you could steer clear. So let's look first at the psychological pattern of pathological externalization. In these folks, responsibility is always placed outside the self, an external locus of control. These are the finger pointers. These are the everything is everyone else's fault. Harm is really reframed as misunderstanding. Oh, my lies ruined your life? I was only speaking my truth. I was just asking questions. Apologies are very rare or conditional and never sincere from these people. And these behaviors are often associated with narcissistic traits and severe insecurity masked as confidence. In my opinion, a particular Hollywood couple comes to mind. The next psychological pattern of manipulators to consider is equal parts cognitive distortion and self-preservation. I'm sure there's a word for this combo, but I've said it before, I'm not a psychological professional, so we must all suffer the consequences of that. So anyways, these are the folks who are so good at warping their reality, they actually start to believe their own lies. For these folks, events are unconsciously rewritten in their own brain to protect identity. And basically, they retell stories to themselves so they come out looking like the good guy to themselves. Other people may not buy it, but to themselves, they come out looking like the good guy. And they're really convinced of this story. The person genuinely believes their altered version. Some people can unconsciously rewrite their stories to such a degree they become delusional in believing their own lies. They then spread this information and spend an extraordinary amount of time and resources to convince everyone else of their own delusions. Contradictory evidence to these people feels very threatening instead of informative. So anytime someone points out a fact that negates their own delusional version, they start screaming about how they're being harassed and attacked. Remind you of anyone currently draining their bank accounts to stay relevant with PR tactics? Maybe anyone currently being highlighted in the New York Times or People Magazine or TMZ? Anyways, these unsettling behaviors can be seen in certain personality disorder traits and in trauma-based maladaptive coping skills. I could see that. The next psychological pattern of manipulators is instrumental empathy, or weaponized empathy, as I like to call it. These folks can really read others' emotions really, really well, like to a scary degree. But they twist the information they discover and are very skilled at weaponizing it against the person. They use that emotional insight for control, leverage, or image management. Kind of like how, in my opinion, and allegedly, let's get those disclaimers out there, kind of like how Blake Lively sniffed out Brandon Sklenar's desperation to get into A-list films. He was an extra in It Ends With Us. I barely had any lines. So she got him to support her accusations about Baldoni. Unfortunately, this was after Brandon Sklenar had already gone on record to say that the filming of It Ends With Us and Baldoni as a director and an actor was amazing. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but it was all positive from this guy prior to Blake Lively getting her claws into him and swooping him off to some, island retreat or some such crap. She got him a leading role in a new film. This is not a secret. Everybody's talking about it. Now that he already got his shiny new bribe. Oh, my bad. Did I say bribe? I meant his shiny new movie role that brought him from a D-list roster as basically a background character with 1 or 2 lines at best, all the way to an A-list director film as a leading role playing a character type he's never played before, but some way, somehow, this director who just got done working with Blake Lively and loves to kiss her butt just knew that Brandon Sklenar would be the perfect for this role after Blake Lively insisted. Well, of course, now he's backpedaling because he already got his shiny new role. We don't want to call it a bribe. It's not a bribe. It's just the shiny new role that Blake Lively got for him. Because now he's backpedaling and he's trying to get as far away from the Reynolds as possible. And I think it's hilarious. Just a general thought. But you got to remember to withhold a bribe until you get what you need from the situation. This is just all in my opinion. Loyalties from the kind of people who will accept a bribe only last until the payload drop. Duh. Not that I endorse bribing others, but I just wanted to share some rudimentary, elementary common sense with everyone. But I imagine the Moonlit Circle is filled with a much greater sense of empathy, compassion, and love than someone who would choose to get their way like a petulant child with lies and bribes, in my opinion, and a dash of kicking and screaming. Back to the patterns of instrumental empathy, where evil people tend to use your openness against you. For them, empathy is really performative. It's not reciprocal. Easy if you've been trained to act in any capacity. Just saying. These people can often be mistaken for charismatic, leadership material, or even emotionally intelligent. But this is a facade, like the little light dangling on the anglerfish to draw you in and make you feel safe before they strike. And the final and most damning psychological pattern of manipulators is victim-persecutor switching. The person actively harming another positions themselves in the storytelling as being the one harmed, while literally causing harm to that person. While literally actively causing harm to that person, they go, oh, I'm the victim. Critics become attackers. Kind of like how some famous people think that anything negative about them online couldn't possibly come from real people. It must be a rival trying to make them look bad in the press by attacking them with bots. Boundaries are framed as abuse for these folks. All you have to do is read through the depositions of It Ends With Us lawsuit to see a lot of double standards, and I know you are, but what am I, coming from the Blake Lively legal camp, in my opinion. Don't sue me, please. I don't have anything. They honestly aren't looking good in this. Blake Lively's legal team is just, they're really not looking good. And, and the legal team itself has taken to projecting complaints to the judge about activities they themselves are initiating. It's wild. You can't scream Darvo while actively conducting Darvo, but I digress. But this victim switching, this is a power preserving strategy, not confusion. It's meant to make the original offender appear to be the actual victim. If you find yourself caught in a Darvo cycle, that stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender, for those who don't know, and they call it Darvo. So essentially, Darvo is when someone is confronted about harm that they've done, they deny it, they attack the confronter, recast themselves as the victim, and that's Darvo. True abusers have this process down pat. I mean, it's their carpe diem. Don't argue the accusation. It feeds the trolls. And it literally feeds the abusive pattern, perpetuating the cycle of abuse. Since any kind of self-defense is undoubtedly being used against you as retaliation. So what you can do to protect yourself from Darvo or the pattern of victim persecutor switching is, number one, anchor yourself to documented facts and nothing more. And if they don't exist, create them yourself. We talked about creating yourself emails, getting emails out there, making sure that the chronological issues are listed out. Something else that you can do to protect yourself from the victim persecutor switching is naming behaviors, not motives. This is a big one because you could say, you are continuing to hug me too tightly, even though I asked you to stop previously. This is a simple, direct statement, and it's naming the actual behavior. But again, you don't think clearly when emotions are high, so you might end up saying something like something emotional like, you're such a creep, why are you trying to make me feel uncomfortable? This is not going to get you anywhere. So it's definitely worth it to practice ahead of time the words that you want to say, because manipulators are going to use everything you say against you. Here in this situation where you've allowed the emotions to get the best of you, so you've said a statement that was not behavior motivated. It was talking about, you were assigning motives to your supervisor. You're saying, you're a creep, that's why you did this. You're trying to make me feel uncomfortable, that's why you did this. You're trying to guess this person's motives. And you don't know what their motives are. You never will. And they're going to argue that point. Here you've tried to attach the motive to the action, and you give cause for someone to defend themselves when you do that. Because, they were just called a creep and being accused of trying to make you uncomfortable. Where what you could have said was to just call out the behavior. And there's no denying that. You were continuing to hug me too tightly. The hug just happened. He can't say I didn't hug you. He just hugged you. You are continuing to hug me too tightly, even though I asked you to stop previously. Add that part in. If this is like the second or third time you've had this conversation, you need to make that reality clear to the person that is making you uncomfortable. And now they don't have anything to come back at you with, because the hug did happen. You don't know about creep status. You don't know if he was genuinely trying to make you feel uncomfortable. But what you've done is you've provided ammunition for him to argue your point. And you don't want to do that. So again, you want to name the behavior, not the motive, if you're going to communicate with this person. And then something else that you want to do is to reduce emotional engagement. You want to avoid saying the wrong thing or giving any kind of ammunition to these folks. So you really have to pull yourself in and be very careful about what you open yourself up to with manipulators. You want to go full gray stone to anyone attempting to use Darvo against you. And then use boundaries, not explanations. Because again, if you over explain, you're just giving ammunition. Let's say that you say, I've asked you multiple times to not hug me as it makes me feel uncomfortable. There, boundary set. You used a boundary. You said, I've asked you multiple times, don't hug me, makes me feel uncomfortable. It's not a full-blown explanation, although you do provide a little bit of a rationale. You didn't dive into it. But sometimes when emotions are high, and especially for you people pleasers, or to some extent, you neurospicy folks who always tend to over-explain. You might end up saying in an overly emotional setting something like, I'm just not very into hugging. When I was a child, I was forced to hug, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't do that. All you're doing is giving manipulative people more power over you. You're giving them additional ammunition. If you have clocked someone as being a manipulator, stop talking to them altogether. Because everything that you give them is ammunition. Boundaries never require an explanation. In fact, you don't even, like I said, you don't even need to say that the hug makes you feel uncomfortable. You can actually just say, do not hug me again. Boom, done. Drop the mic. Anything extra you add will be used against you by someone with pathological externalization, by someone who is a manipulator and uses tools like victim persecutor switching, and someone who will weaponize empathy against you. I mean, these folks are quite something else, and you just need to steer clear from them. So let's see where we are. Important reminders. I do just want to remind everyone that not everyone who causes harm is malicious. We'll go over that here shortly. But impact matters more than intent, and the way you feel about a situation matters. You shouldn't try to bury your feelings for the sake of others' comforts. If you're uncomfortable in a situation, you have a right to set a boundary, so set it. Before we close up with the dark side of the moon, I just want to say that the shadow side isn't revealed really by dramatic villains, although we certainly find them there. It's revealed by patterns and by what people refuse to take responsibility for. This is where we find our lessons, and it's fantastic to be able to watch other people go through these scenarios so that we can learn from their situations along the way. Although, these are some pretty painful scenarios that we're talking about. Families are being ruined, companies are being destroyed, people's livelihoods are being flushed down the drain, and it's all happening as a spectacle in front of all of us in the media. And so it can't be easy for them to go through that. So we do want to give thanks to people who are, setting standards for situations like this and going through the paces to allow for us to learn from scenarios of this magnitude. So just wanted to throw that out there, that I do know that people are struggling. So I don't want that to be swept under the rug, that, when we analyze, it ends with us. We're talking about real people's lives that is being destroyed in front of our very eyes. And, also to close up the dark side of the moon, healthy people mentally, emotionally healthy people can tolerate accountability. They can open their minds to the notion of being wrong or ignorant. Unhealthy people and systems, such as folks with chronic pathological externalization and folks who lean into victim blaming, require distortion to survive. Reality doesn't jive with them, so they create their own. And the moment you stop participating in the distortion, is going back to this gray rocking these folks, the moment you stop feeding the trolls, you step back into your own light, quietly, powerfully, and intact. Don't let people lost in the shadows steal your light. That's all I'm saying. So what do we do with this information? Now that we know who these folks are and we can pinpoint them and what their day-to-day activities are and how they're going to interact with us and how we might be able to protect ourselves in those interactions. What do we do with that information? So to stay on target with our topic of people who use and abuse and manipulate, for tonight's teaching journey, I'd like to show you how to protect yourself from let me just say it, the Blake Lively's of the world. And if you find yourself backed into a corner and forced to defend yourself from a garden variety actress with a garden variety behavioral issue, in my opinion, and very poorly scripted lies, in my opinion, protection is not about confrontation in those situations. The good Lord knows that Blake Lively is a lost cause and she's his problem now. But protection from someone like that is about structure. Because listen, someone else's garden variety crap can bring a serious and unmanageable level of chaos into your world. So you need to be on alert and aware of your surroundings at all times. I'm going to take you through some practical self-protection tools you can utilize if someone starts causing drama in your own life. And these tools can be used for any kind of chaos demon. This is not specific to the issues that were present on the It Ends With Us movie set. So if anyone's bringing drama and chaos into your life, listen up. These are the steps you need to take. Document early. Keep records of agreements, conversations, and boundaries set. And the best way to write those out and to document them is in real time, to make sure that there's real-time timestamps. Written clarity reduces narrative manipulation later, and having a clear chronological order of events is one of the best ways to remember exactly what happened and to not feed into whatever made-up situation is going to embellish your story from a manipulator later on. Do not over-explain. This is a big one. I mean, if you have to respond to these people, you keep it nice and short and sweet. Over-explaining gives manipulators more material. And the more material they have, the faster they can take you down, and with greater purpose. Clear, brief boundaries are safer. Don't touch me. I mean, you can make it as simple as that. Do not touch me. In fact, reduce or eliminate overall interactions with these folks whenever possible. It's not just about don't over-explain. It's, pull back on even having encounters with them. Watch behavior, not words. And this is a big one for life in general. Like, people talk a lot. People can talk all kinds of stuff, but do they back it up with their behaviors? And that's where you're going to find a person's character. You want to look at promises versus actual patterns. You want to look at accountability versus justification. Is someone making excuses? Or are they saying, got it, I'll not do that again. I understand what I did was wrong. I won't do that again. Repair versus reputation management. Are they actually trying to repair a situation or a relationship, or are they just looking to make themselves look better? Consistency tells the truth faster than charm, and actions will always be more telling than reputation. Something else is to use third party anchors, especially whenever there's a power imbalance, like we were talking about with the hugging supervisor. You want mediators, you want HR, you want legal counsel, you want neutral witnesses if there's a power imbalance. Start wherever you feel most comfortable along the way. And again, I do encourage internal addressing this internally within a company before trying to take it to the state or to external legal counsel. But power imbalances do require some kind of external stabilizer. So I don't recommend that, if you have somebody higher up than you and you have come to them with a complaint about their behavior and they don't immediately repair that, then you need an external stabilizer in that situation. You need a neutral third party to help you through those conversations. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But also, trust your own nervous system. Your gut tells you when people aren't good for you. Confusion, dread, or hypervigilance, those all equal data. All of those feelings and sensations, they're not confusion. You're picking up signs that something is off here. Trust your gut. You don't need proof to step back and make yourself safe. If Mr. Hugger was, if he stopped immediately hugging you, but now he puts his hand on your shoulder, you don't need to start hey, I would like to let you know that I don't like your hand on my shoulder. You don't have to start that process all over again. That is the same situation. You're hugging me too tightly. Now you're putting your hand on my shoulder when I asked you to stop. That's still second warning. We don't start back at one. So, you know what I mean? You don't need at that point proof of what he was thinking in his head. You don't need proof that it was an innocent move. No, you asked him not to hug you so tightly, and his next move was to put his hand on your shoulder. As a person who is not intimate with each other, that is inappropriate. So trust your instincts first and foremost, because, safety is reason enough. Your safety is reason enough. So, at the end of the day, self-protection isn't about winning an argument or proving someone wrong. It's about preserving your peace, your reputation, and your nervous system. Because let me tell you, manipulators, they can turn your world upside down in a heartbeat. They can bring in the chaos. People who use, twist, and abuse narratives thrive on reaction. They want engagement. They want confusion. They want you pulled into defending yourself against a story that was never written in good faith to begin with. And you don't owe anyone access to you. You don't owe explanations to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't. If someone is just absolutely not going to hear you, you don't owe that person an explanation. You certainly don't owe anyone an over explanation, and you don't need consensus to step back. The only thing you need is to feel not safe. But structure is your safety with these folks. With manipulators, documentation is your anchor, and distance is not weakness, it's discernment. You got get out of my circle. We don't like manipulators in our circle. So, when you stop trying to connect the chaos and you stop or connect with the chaos and you stop trying to understand the chaos, you stop trying to correct the chaos and you start containing it with boundaries instead, the dynamic changes. The noise loses oxygen and the pattern reveals itself. This is usually when manipulators will get tired of you because you're no fun to play with if you're not going to play along with their rules. And you stay intact while someone else is exhausting themselves chasing control of you. And so, that's fantastic. Don't give them anything. Trust what your body is telling you too. protect your clarity. And remember that walking away early is often the most powerful boundary you can ever set. You don't have to listen to someone. You don't have to hear someone out. Now, if you're in a professional setting, it's a little different. It's a little different of rules, you know? I mean, if your supervisor comes to you and needs to talk to you about something work related, you can't just be like, well, I don't want you in my vicinity because once you hugged me too tightly and I had to ask you to stop. Okay. If that is a situation, if that is a scenario, you can no longer accept work instruction coming from this human being. You absolutely have to involve HR at that point, because now you're being, non-compliant in your own employment, and that's not a good look. And so you want to make sure that you are balancing your professionalism with these situations. And the most professional thing to do is to document early. So make sure that you're reaching out to HR or your state labor board, or your certification board, or any of that nature. And the labor department is always going to have ideas on where you can go. But yeah. So, and also you don't have to fight every single battle. Just because a manipulator comes at you with an accusation or with something wrong, or they want to try and engage with you in some way, you just need to know when it isn't yours to fight. If the battle's not yours, then step away. You need to also, remember how to protect yourself against those who seek to destroy others. And what are we talking about? Structure is safety. Documenting is safety. You want to avoid people who tend to thrive on twisting narratives. So there's quite a bit that you can do to protect yourself. Well, one of the babies just called. Even as an adult, they call when they're sick. So, not feeling good. Poor guy. Well, I would like to take everyone through the first couple of days of the new year as we look at the weekly sky map. We've had quite a busy sky lately with comets and asteroids going through. And as we step into the first days of the new year, the sky really continues to offer us a moment of pause and perspective before we move into 2026. This is not a subtle week overhead. It's very luminous, very powerful, and quietly symbolic. I do love this symbolism of the sky. So I'm always going to bring us back towards that. And, the moon is full this week, and the earth is closest to the sun. We are reaching perihelion this week. And the sky reminds us that, even though the depths of winter are among us, we are held in cycles far larger than our own. We tend to break our annual lives into 4 sections for the seasons, but we're always in and amongst so much larger cycles. And I just wanted to take a look at what's unfolding above us for this coming week. Like I said, the moon is reaching fullness, and on January 3rd, let's see what day that is. January 3rd is going to be on Saturday, and that's when we will have the wolf moon, the full wolf moon. And it's going to be glowing brightly all night long. The full wolf moon has been associated with survival and resilience and community. And it rises at a time when the nights are really long and the landscape is bare, reminding us that endurance itself is a form of wisdom. But under this light, emotions may feel very heightened. and instincts very sharpened, and truth's hard to ignore. And I don't know, I feel like that is kind of what we're seeing, in the world around us right now as well, is just very, very heightened emotions and sharpened instincts and truths that are hard to ignore. So I really love that that's, not only feeding into our personal lives, but also, the world at large. And this is a moon that really asks us to listen very closely to ourselves and to what has been calling for our attention. And so you have to really listen what's been calling for you for 2026. And but also Earth is at its perihelion on the same day, on January 3rd. So on Saturday, we have a full moon, and we are at our closest point to the sun in its yearly orbit. And there's really something very quietly beautiful about this. Even as winter grips much of the northern hemisphere, we actually are nearer to the sun than we are at any other time of the year. So the irony is not lost on me, being in the middle of the West Coast, and we're experiencing some actual cold right now. These poor Californians can't take it when we are below 60 at any point. And right now, there's ice on the windshield. It's ridiculous. And I am certainly no longer acclimated for that. But warmth may not be immediately felt, even though we're as close as we're going to get to the sun. But it is closer than it appears. This is really a powerful metaphor, just coming close to the sun. It's really a powerful metaphor for early January, that the light is already returning. And even, let's try that again. The quadrantids. The quadrantids. I always mess that one up. The quadrantids are one of the strongest meteor showers of the year. They're active from late December through early January, but this year they're going to be peaking the night of January 3rd to the 4th. So again, Saturday night is where it's all happening. But because the moon is actually going to be full at the peak of this meteor shower, the moonlight's going to wash out many of the fainter meteors. However, this particular meteor shower is actually known for producing very bright, fast-moving fireballs, and so those may still cut through the glow. For the best viewing, go out the hours just before dawn on January 4th, and that offers the best chance to spot the visible meteor shower, even with the moonlight present. Personally, I could never get up that early, but bundle up and find a dark patch of sky and let your eyes adjust if you are so inclined. We are having some close approaches. Tonight, as a matter of fact, the moon passes near Saturn, creating a very graceful pairing in the evening sky after sunset. And so this alignment blends lunar intention with Saturn's really very steady presence. Saturn has a very steady grounding presence and influence over us. And it's a lovely visual reminder of balance and emotion and structure, balance between feeling and responsibility, and between softness and strength, really kind of sharing the same sky. So I do love that blend. And, this week's sky is not about really spectacle alone. It's about orientation, a full moon that asks us to listen to our instincts, and a planet closest to the sun, even in winter's depths. Meteors that remind us how brief, bright, and unexpected moments of beauty can be. And if we step outside this week, even for a few minutes, for me it's definitely going to be a few minutes because it's still very cold outside, let the sky do what it does best. Put things back into proportion. We are small, we are tiny, and we are part of something very vast. But both things can be true at once. The minusculeness of our little lives here on planet Earth, and the fact that we are part of this machine. We are part of this dance that happens in the night sky every night. And, and that is beautiful. Both of those things are true. We are part of something so big. Keep watching the skies, Moonlit Circle, and, I hope that they gently guide you forward. So what did we learn tonight? We learned that the shadow isn't really revealed by dramatic villains. It's revealed by patterns and by what people refuse to take responsibility for. Not everyone who causes harm is malicious. That's an important lesson for today. But impact does still matter more than intent when you're looking at self-preservation and self-protection. Healthy people can tolerate accountability. They can sit with discomfort. They can adjust, repair, and grow. Unhealthy systems, however, require distortion and lies to survive. And they will ask you to participate in that distortion in the name of keeping the peace or explaining your side. And you don't have to. That's the most important lesson. You don't have to engage with those folks. You don't have to engage with manipulators. The moment you stop over-explaining, stop feeding the narrative, and stop engaging in bad faith cycles, you reclaim your energy. You step out of the shadow and back into your own light, quietly, powerfully, and intact. Protect your clarity. Trust your nervous system. Use your words. And don't let people lost in the dark steal the light you've worked so hard to grow. Thank you for sitting with me tonight in the Moonlit Circle. And remember, my little moonbeams, keep dreaming, keep wondering, and keep glowing. Gwendie out. By the light of the silvery